we will have Mr. From region, Mr. Layelo, will come in to do her also 2 minutes. You want 3 minutes? Okay. I'll extend to 3 minutes, but we'll try to manage the presentations so that afterwards we engage the audience for any other interventions, clarifications, or maybe questions if they need be. So let me take this opportunity to invite Ms. Sarah to do her 5 minutes presentation. The 5 minutes counts from now, Ms. Sarah. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, Honorable. I'll just wait for my slides to get on the screen, but in the meantime, honorable members of parliament, distinguished colleagues and partners, it is a privilege to be with you here in Nairobi with sincere appreciation to the IPU and the Parliament of Kenya. I've traveled from my home country of the Philippines, so it's quite a journey to get here, but I'm happy to be here. Methane mitigation is one of the few climate actions capable of delivering measurable cooling this decade, and vulnerable nations must be positioned to capture development gains. So the CVF-V20 is a partnership of 74 climate vulnerable economies representing 1.7 billion people. 33 members are from Africa, and Barbados currently chairs this along with Ghana and Bangladesh, forming the Troika. So under Prime Minister Mia Mottley's leadership, the CVF-V20 has made methane a flagship priority across waste, oil and gas sectors. Unlike carbon dioxide, methane lasts only about 12 years in the atmosphere, and so reductions today can produce significant measurable cooling within this decade. And for vulnerable nations like ours, this matters enormously because this can slow down warming in order to reduce heat waves, droughts, floods, food insecurity, and displacement. So it is at the end of the day about protecting lives, livelihoods, and our development pathways. Many methane interventions generate revenue, improve public health, and increase energy access, as well as strengthen infrastructure resilience. Climate action and economic prosperity must and can advance together. Africa accounts for roughly 14% of global methane emissions, which is relatively low, and there are relatively few super emitters compared with other regions. However, methane mitigation opportunities vary per sector and are increasingly becoming practical and economically viable. For example, in the waste sector, landfill capture represents one of the clearest low-hanging opportunities. Waste-to-energy systems can reduce emissions while generating electricity and improving sanitation. And then in the oil and gas sector, reducing venting, flaring, emissions, these can all preserve commercially valuable gas while cutting down pollution. So just to give some context, cutting methane leakage in the oil and gas sector could save the equivalent of Norway's gas output per year. So this is a strategic priority that can deliver climate benefits as well as development gains. So the economics is compelling. The IEA notes that nearly half of the fossil fuel methane emissions can be cut at zero net cost. Landfill projects generate energy and revenue, reducing leakage preserves fuel and can be sold rather than wasted. So this is why methane action should be utilized towards productive infrastructure capable of supporting green growth and employment. Yet financing remains the largest obstacle. In African countries, interest rates on loans can vary between 15 to 25%. This is against 3 to 5% that we see in developed economies like Europe and North America. And this is why methane finance aligns more broadly with the international financial reform agenda of the CVF and the V20. And we heard from previous speakers in the last sessions about the challenges of financing that exist today, especially in this new world order, and that the CVF and the V20 is approaching this challenge by looking inward and looking for fairer terms. So what we know is that the money exists. Trillions are in global capital markets, they are available, and 3 trillion of this sits in Africa, yet very little is being invested in Africa itself. And we know why. Borrowing is expensive, debt servicing costs are high, bankable pipelines are thin, and institutions are working in parallel. And so we are working on a V20 Development Finance Institution Compact. This is one of the many efforts to help us change the direction of capital towards health, education, water, and value addition. And it rests on 4 ideas. 1, making capital more affordable. 2, bringing private investment into health, education, water, and value addition, knowing that none of them are possible without affordable energy. And 3, letting countries lead through our climate prosperity plans, our platforms. And 4, build debt instruments that give us breathing room when disasters strike, so that we are not doing this alone. The OPEC Fund for International Development is a key partner. The Arab Coordination Group with Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Abu Dhabi, and the Islamic Development Bank are all involved. The World Bank is partnering with us as well for Africa, and we hope in time the African Development Bank will join. I would also like to take this opportunity, to share about a V20 central bank initiative called the Lifeline Fund. We know that we would have been 20% wealthier if not for climate change. So when disaster strikes, our options are quite limited. And for many CVF countries, the only option is the IMF for liquidity. So what we plan to do is pool CVF V20 dollar reserves, just 0.01% of what we already hold, so that we can lend to each other, just so that no country faces crisis with just the IMF as an available option. And I think the point is we are stronger than we think, and we can help each other across the continents, Asia, Latin America, Africa, the Caribbean. And by doing so, we hope to invite partnership on our terms, not on terms dictated in rooms where we have no voice. And so just coming back to the methane point, we have 64 of the 74 members of the membership joining the methane, the global methane pledge, and this is significant. This is a big market opportunity. And in terms of where we see parliamentary asks and partnership pathways, first, establishing methane monitoring and reporting requirements is really important. Second, mandating leak detection and repair programs for oil and gas infrastructure. Third, allocating funds for landfill gas capture and waste to energy systems. And fourth, advocating with us for concessional and affordable capital. Partnerships will be essential, and this includes bilateral cooperation, but what we should look for is not only technology transfer, but actually technology co-development. We have practices in our home countries, which we could share across the Global South. Public-private partnership, support from multilateral development banks, and collaboration within ourselves. So just to finalize, it is a huge market opportunity to pull the methane emergency brake. The technologies exist, the economics are compelling, but the missing piece is the affordable finance. And so we look forward to working with you in ensuring that the scale, speed, and quality of finance is delivered at this moment, as is demanded of us given the climate and development challenges we face today. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Salah. Thank you, Ms. Salah, for those insightful reflections. I'm sure the audience have grasped 1 or 2, 3 things, though you had many more time, but I'm sure they'll be able to ask and find out more from your presentation. At this time and point, let me invite Ms. Sina Spiegler for your 5 minutes, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Honorable members of Parliament, distinguished delegates, dear guests, colleagues, it's an honor to be here. I'm joining you from the Climate and Clean Air Coalition Secretariat, and I'm sure my slides will come on in a minute as well, but the CCAC, if you're not familiar, is a UNEP-convened initiative focused on reducing short-lived climate pollutants, methane among those, and really focusing on science to policy research. So there have been quite a few assessments that the CCAC has co-authored, and then also really working on implementing those into action. So largely that's through supporting mitigation projects, roughly half of those actually in the African region, and many of those on methane. Here you can see some figures. That's for methane. There's been a lot of support specifically on national planning and working with countries to integrate methane more into NDCs. We've already heard a lot why methane is so important and why it matters. So here you can see some key numbers again. One that I really want to highlight again, and this is really, I think, also important for the framing that in the African context, I mean, methane, of course, has been viewed in the climate sphere, but it's really not necessarily just the global climate solidarity or international obligations. Of course, those matter, but it's really the self-interest and the local benefits that can happen from all the negative methane consequences that really are local. So, for example, in Africa, the estimate for preventable deaths every year is at 200,000. So this would be from SLCP mitigation measures that are available specifically on methane. And then, of course, also annual crop loss, the 25 million tons, that's a global figure, but of course in Africa, agriculture being a hugely important sector, that's very relevant as well. And so methane being so important there, being a precursor for ground level ozone that is damaging human health and crops. In 2022, the CCAC, UNEP, and the African Union have published an integrated assessment of air pollution and climate change for sustainable development in Africa. That's a really comprehensive assessment. And so I just want to share some few figures from there. There have been 37 identified measures in that assessment, and so that's really been like working together with African scientists and institutions. And from those measures, the estimate is that 40% of Africa's methane emission could be reduced by 2030, with an even higher figure for the 2063 agenda. Livestock, of course, being a huge lever here, but really also livestock productivity. So not trying to increase farmer income and increase productivity, and of course not at all stocks or any of the sort, because of course agriculture and also waste, those are sectors where emissions are forecasted to rise due to more demand. But so really just highlighting that measures here are benefiting productivity and can often come as low cost or even net negative cost, as we've heard before, from, for example, waste as well, where methane can be captured and can be used as a resource. And so in the African Ministerial Conference on the Environment in that year in 2022, that assessment has been endorsed, and there's been a call to implement these 37 recommended measures as a continent-wide Africa Clean Air Program. So that's something that the African Union and also the CCAC supporting are currently working on. So just to reiterate that, yes, the evidence base is really strong. The political mandate exists at a ministerial level. And so really what we're missing still is the translation from that mandate into legislation and then into actual implementation, into the budgets, the oversights. To give you some figures also from the international context, of course, we've heard about the Global Methane Pledge. Last year, the CCAC and UNEP have issued a global methane status report as well, to show us a little bit on where we stand with those commitments and where we see emissions still coming from. In terms of the sources, we've already heard about that. So globally, that actually is reflective of how the split is in the African continent as well, with agriculture being the biggest source, but then also really energy and waste. And for all of those, technical solutions do exist, and often costs are manageable, oftentimes even productive businesses, so coming at net negative costs, especially in the fossil fuel sector, for example, like we've heard before, from avoid flaring and venting, capturing methane emissions there and reutilizing that. Similarly in the waste sector, from wastewater and landfills, capturing methane and utilizing that resource. And so there is promise in there. Otherwise, the status report, of course, has also shown that for this 30% target, we're really quite far away from that. So right now, if we assume that all the commitments that exist in NDCs and in national action plans were committed, we'd only see an 8% reduction. But the report also affirmed again that with technically available solutions, we could reach a point that is even a little beyond 30%. So 32% of technically feasible mitigation measures have been estimated there. So I also want to highlight again the economic case for action, because methane really is not just an environmental issue, but an economic issue. It can be economic strategy for competitiveness, for trade policy, for investment flows. We've already seen, for example, in the energy markets that regulations have been introduced that shape how energy is produced, how food is grown, and so some of these rules influence market access, of course, and how investments can be attracted. So an early positioning can really come with a lot of opportunities there. And yes, highlighting again that it's really methane action is not a trade-off against development or economic policy. It is economic policy with these low-cost or revenue-generating measures available. I had some points also about the type of work that the CCAC has supported here, but I don't think I'll go into detail to save some time, but just a few examples. I mean, on methane, really, I think a key point has always been integrating methane more concretely into national policy planning, so whether it is NDC commitments or whether it is then really more sectoral strategies as well in countries on which measures have the most impact and can be most feasibly implemented. So there has been quite a lot of work on that with countries, for example, like Ghana, who's the founding member of the CCAC as well, really working from the policy integration and then more sectorally working on, for example, recently methane guidelines for implementation of the new petroleum regulation, which is really a great example for oil-producing countries in particular. In Nigeria as well there's been a lot of work on that. So Uganda, Zimbabwe, I mean, I can name quite a few. But yeah, I think I will leave it at this and the key actions for Parliament, so to really tie it back to this room, but as we've also already heard from prior speakers, I think is really the legislation, so making sure that there is, for example, methane sector-specific targets, quantifiable targets, making sure that MRV frameworks are in existence, because of course the measuring is such an important factor in the verification of the implementation of commitments that have been made. The budgeting, of course, because only institutions that are budgeted can really continue to maintain capacity that they have to implement and enforce commitments that have been made. The oversight to hold governments accountable and to track progress on all of these commitments. The representation of communities that are often the ones most affected, are often the ones most marginalized. So it's really important to link the methane action always to those local benefits. So for example, when it's in the waste sector or landfills, making sure that those are really the focus area, the benefits for human health on the ground. And the communication, of course, because I think methane is not necessarily a complicated issue, but it's often not so clearly presented. And so that framing, that it's really more than an environmental or climate issue, but that it's a human health issue, that it's an economic issue, I think that's really important to convey as well. So just thank you very much, and I'll leave it here.
Thank you, Ms. Sena. That was a wonderful presentation. So allow me at this point in time to invite the two honorable members to say something in regards to the presentations made, but also maybe a bigger reflection of the methane subject. At this point in time, I invite Honorable Sherry Duya to speak something on the topic of discussion. Thank you. Over to you, Honorable.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon once again, honorable members of Parliament, our regional international partners, IPU, distinguished delegates. My first intervention will have to do with the economics of methane, because one of the major reasons, excuses that countries give for their inaction is the cost. However, recent studies have revealed compelling economic reasons why we should take action. And I will make reference to one of such recent studies by the researchers from the London School of Economics, Duke University, the University of Delaware, and the National Bank of Belgium. This study was published in October 2025. And from the study, global action to cut methane emissions would pay for itself 6 times. According to the study, the achieving global methane pledge alone would result in more than $1 trillion in annual avoided market damages by 2050. And it is important also to stress that the study highlighted that lower income countries would benefit more from methane emission reduction actions. And under conservative assumptions, the benefit to cost ratio for methane action is at least 3 to 1. That is the lowest, rising to 6 to 1 when health co-benefits are included. So, distinguished delegates, the issue of cost as an excuse for inaction, for me, is no longer tenable. Apart from issue of climate, as the earlier speaker said, it also makes economic sense since it can pay itself up to 6 times. Now, let me quickly shift my attention to what we are doing in Ghana. Ghana has shown global leadership in the methane agenda. Far back in 2010, Ghana joined the Global Methane Initiative, and Ghana was a founding member of the CCAC in 2012. In 2018, Ghana's capital, Accra, became the first African city to join CCAC's Brave Life campaign. And in 2019, Ghana was the first country in the world to include short-lived climate pollutants, including methane, and our 4th official national greenhouse gas inventory submitted to the UNFCCC. In 2025, Ghana became one of the very few countries in the world to appoint a minister responsible solely for climate change. Countries have environment and climate, but ministers responsible for climate change alone. In addition to having environment, science and technology minister, in addition to having minister responsible for environment, natural resources, including forests, Ghana has appointed a minister of state solely in charge of climate change, and that brings the political momentum, it brings resources to tackle climate change and ultimately the methane agenda. Finally, Ghana, under the distinguished leadership of the Speaker of Parliament, Ghana Parliament is playing a pivotal role in all these, especially in the area of climate methane diplomacy. Following our partnership with IPU, Ghana Parliament is embarking on aggressive capacity building for parliamentarians and parliamentary staff. We've also elevated the conversation, number of debate statements on the floor of Parliament, and we've also increased our budgetary allocation. For 2026, the Speaker actually directed that actions towards methane reduction mitigation measures should be allocated with enough resources, and we saw substantial increase over the previous year. And we have 5 parliamentary committees that are being coordinated seamlessly to work together to deal with climate and ultimately methane. And finally, the engagement is key. There is something unique I personally have started in Ghana as a parliamentarian. I have established climate action clubs in schools where I engage the school children. And on the 5th June, the World Environment Day, the whole day is dedicated for methane action. There will be quizzes amongst various schools, and we will undertake various initiatives to draw their attention and elevate the methane conversation. So these are some of the things that we in Ghana are doing. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Honorable Kiele Dua from Ghana. So much things to learn from Ghana. I think they need a better hand of applause because they seem to be doing a lot already. If parliaments, if countries are to do a benchmarking, I think Ghana would be the best place to go. So we have got a lot to learn from you, Honorable, and I'm sure you share some of the writings and presentations that you did so that the Honorable members in here should have a copy of what you prepared. I think you had too much to share on the success stories. Thank you so much. At this point in time, let me invite Honorable Mashauli to come in also with 3 minutes, and please stick to your 3 minutes. I know you guys have got a lot to share. Much as it is exciting, but we've got time to manage. So please come in, Honorable. It's your time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Moderator. Maybe let me start by saying that a few months ago, my president, Cyril Ramaphosa, went to America at the funeral of Jesse Jackson, Reverend. He traveled 18 hours, and they said he must speak for 2 minutes. He protested. When we were at the room there, holding room, you said we have 5 to 7 minutes. I just want to openly protest. Maybe it's a South African thing, that I will stick to my 5 minutes. The first point I want to make is that, in Africa and the world, when we speak about the climate crisis, we tend to think about our coal-powered stations that emit carbon dioxide and our cars that emit carbon dioxide. And I think with these presentations and this discussion, we are starting to realize that there is a more powerful ghost in the room called methane, which requires us to have a change of mind in how we tackle it. When something has got over 80 times potent than carbon dioxide, and over a period of 20 years can cause disaster, I tend to look at it like a marathon, which is global warming, and the end point, the finishing line, is disaster. And we have a sprinter, which is methane, and a long runner, which is carbon dioxide. And that tells us that if we want to deal with the climate crisis, we must deal with a sprinter first, because it will get there at the finishing line first and cause disasters before carbon dioxide. So we need a change of thinking in that. But for the African continent, this is linked to our livelihoods. You may have heard the gentleman who was here who spoke about if you want him to stop expanding how his cattle graze, he's not going to be a happy man. But if you were to tell him to say graze more or have your cattle grazing more, he will be a happy man. So it is a livelihood issue when it comes to the African continent, because the reality is that the African continent relies on livestock and traditional farming practices as a backbone of its economy. Now, you can't say, don't strike a balance, you will get revolts. Because what people want wealth, and African peasants' wealth is their cattle or livestock and farming. Now, when cities grow, as an African continent is still growing, it's not developed, you get to undergo what I want to term urban explosion, where waste management infrastructure can't catch up. You have landfills that are growing, and those landfills become chimneys that emit methane into the atmosphere, and it becomes deadly. And speeding up this process of arresting methane crisis, you need to look at it. People say there is a low-hanging fruit. You need to look at this as a low-hanging fruit that we must stop. But every low-hanging fruit, as low as it is, it needs somebody to climb up and grab it for it to come down. Because once it comes down on its own, it means it's rotten. And that is the finishing line that we call a disaster. And we don't want that to happen. Now let me turn to South Africa. I think I'm still on my 2 minutes.
You've got 2 minutes remaining.
2 minutes remaining, that's fine. So in South Africa, we still have our coal mines, even those that are abandoned, they continue to emit methane. And we see that as an opportunity that we can use to grab the gases and capture for reuse in terms of our energy trajectory. The waste crisis, like I said, as urban cities grow, we have a crisis. So if you look at Johannesburg and Cape Town, we are struggling to maintain landfills. We must come with an opportunity in terms of technology to convert the waste product into biogas. If we don't do that, we'll be left behind. By doing that, by the way, we create jobs, we have our clean cities, and we reduce our carbon footprint. Now, all of these things can't happen if there's no political will. We need political will, and South Africa has demonstrated that it has a political will. We took the opportunity to lead the global methane pledge in the entire region. How did we do that? We integrated our methane reduction into our national determined contribution. That's a signal that we are ready to lead in the green economy. But how do we speed up this process? Just in a minute, how do we speed up this process? We need data, because you can't manage that which you don't know. You need data to measure that which you are dealing with. Secondly, you need finance. I heard somebody saying we must not act as beggars, and they are correct. We can't be beggars for finances. We need finance that will come with low interest rates when we borrow, so that we use it as a tool to do the job, not as a charity coming our way. I've spoken about the political will. But fellow Africans, as I conclude, there is a song that our forefathers in South Africa used to sing during the apartheid. It was saying, from Cape to Cairo, Morocco to Madagascar. And it was saying, Azania, let's get our land with a bazooka, which was violence. And I'm saying to you today, fellow South Africans, at the end I will sing. I will sing at the end. Let me finish. And I'm saying to you now, fellow Africans, from Cape to Cairo, from Morocco to Madagascar, we have our land. Let's protect it.
Thank you.
Let's protect it from these emissions. Thank you very much. I will sing at the end. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable. Thank you so much. That's so brilliant. Thank you for those remarks, so timely and really insightful. Lastly, I'm inviting Mr. Woyola. Yeah, I think, I don't know if I've missed the name, but you have 2 minutes as well to contribute on something. I know you're an expert on all these issues that we're discussing here. Being a technical person, please come in, 2 minutes.
Yeah, thank you very much, Honorable Moderator. Yeah, before lunch, Senator Kajwang, you're very clear that Kenyans should behave in the afternoon. Dr. Joagio as well, you're very, very clear. So I shall behave. I shall take only 2 minutes. Yeah, so as a private company here in Kenya, we're actually honored to be able to contribute to this conversation on a Pan-African level. Yeah. Last week we were in the Kenyan Parliament with the same conversation, and we're honored to be able to do the same today. So I'll be very brief. 3 things. I'll introduce who we are very, very quickly, and then I'll speak about how we're going beyond climate mitigation into using climate mitigation to fuel through the circular economy, sustainable waste management, and regenerative agriculture. Yeah? And then finally, I'll close by giving the key ask that we'd want from the distinguished members of Parliament as well as the guests who are here today. So very briefly, Regen Organics, also known as Synergy Limited, is the leading organic waste recycling organization in East Africa, and I would say maybe across the continent. Today in Nairobi, we collect more than 50,000 tons of waste per year. So that's organic waste that would have otherwise have gone into the environment. We have our facility, that is our recycling facility. We have one of them just here in Nairobi Metropolitan, so that is about 30 kilometers from here, servicing Nairobi. We have another facility in Western Kenya, servicing the sugar belt across Western Kenya, and then in Kilifi, we have another facility that is servicing the people of Kilifi around the coast. Yeah. So briefly, what we do is we collect organic waste that would otherwise have gone into the environment. And Honorable Member of Parliament, you're clear in terms of what that waste then does. Yeah. So if organic waste is not decomposed correctly in the presence of oxygen, if it goes anaerobic, what happens is it then generates methane. And when methane goes into the environment, as all the speakers have mentioned today, it can be very, very devastating. Yeah? So 84 times more dangerous, more potent than carbon dioxide across 20 years. Yeah? So it is the fastest way from a climate mitigation perspective for us to reduce the pace at which we are increasing the temperatures across the globe. Yeah. So we collect that waste, and then we use 3 technologies to process that waste. The first one is black soldier flies. I think someone mentioned black soldier flies this morning. So that is this insect bigger than the housefly, cleaner than the housefly, that eats the waste. It fattens it. We harvest the larvae of the fly and sell it into the food value chain in terms of food for our animals. Yeah? And then why this is powerful is that it reduces the amount of waste that comes in by 70% in 8 days. So it's a very, very efficient bioconverter of waste. So secondly, we also produce organic fertilizer where we use composting. So that is industrial composting to convert that organic waste into organic fertilizer. And then lastly, we also use biochar, especially across the sugar belt, to convert that waste into biochar. So why is this important? When it comes to organic fertilizers, there needs to be a conversation around productivity in Africa. Yeah? So compared to the globe, especially the global north, where you have winters, their soils tend to rest in the winter. Hence, the organic matter in their soil and the organic carbon in their soil tends to be higher. That's why in Africa and sub-Saharan Africa especially, if you look at productivity when it comes to growing of food, we're basically 50 to 80% of the global average.
2 minutes
now. Oh, thank you. So yeah, so very, very quickly. So by putting that organic waste into organic fertilizer into the soils, farmers are seeing upwards of about 30 to 50% increase in yield. Yeah. So that is a very powerful story about how you can, on one end, mitigate climate, and then on the other end, use that to drive food security. Yeah. So my brief ask is that we are currently selling carbon credits into the voluntary markets because of the emission reductions that you're doing across the process that we have here in Kenya. Now, we are not yet into the compliance markets because we need members of parliament in Kenya and of course across Africa to approve projects that sit within Article 6 of the Paris Agreement. Yeah? Now, that will allow us to get into the compliance markets, which means as Kenya, we now start as a country and working with projects like ourselves, trading government to government across the world, and that is a big thing. So as we continue having discussions, I think on a technical level within Parliament, I think it would be good to figure out how we can more quickly approve projects like ours so that as a country and within our economies, we can fuel the work that we do.
Thank you so much. Thank you all the panelists for the such wonderful information. I'm sure that if we to talk about technical issues, we should say that it goes beyond figures and numbers. Just as I want to borrow your word, Honorable, just as what you said, Honorable Chair, that financing should not be a bar, should not be an excuse of not being, of not taking an action of methane. But also it is true that if nothing is being done on methane, then there will be some grievous disasters, more than what we know on carbon. We're paying more much attention on carbon emissions, and we're leaving out methane, which we really need to start looking at both and making sure that we manage the numbers. If we cannot manage the statistics and the numbers, then it will lead into disaster. I know that we need to invite the audience to say something, but because of time, I don't know if the MC will allow me just to take 2. Okay, fine. So bear with us because of time. All those that had something to say over our panelists, let me ask you to keep that. Just write it somewhere that you don't forget what you wanted to contribute on this session. At this time and point, allow me just to give the panelists 1 minute each, just a minute, to say something to close so that we wind up the session. 1 minute for each speaker, please. Thank you. Strictly 1 minute.
Yes, thank you. I think I just want to mention that as we look at these technologies, there will be opportunities for us, like our countries, to also co-develop these technologies for methane reduction and others. So I think we need to be part of that. The other is affordable finance is our key issue, and I think we need a lot more engagement with parliamentarians on this issue on the global stage. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I would also just reiterate sort of the point that's been made throughout, that there is so much evidence on methane. There are so many solutions that have been identified that are technically available and feasible, often at low cost, and so the economic case is very strong. The costs that are being paid really by people today are real. Those are happening. Those deaths due to air pollution, crop productions due to also methane, methane-triggered ground level ozone. So those are all not, future projections, like when we talk about the 30% methane target by 2030. Those are costs that are being paid today. Of course, yeah, financing is a big topic, and there is a finance gap that needs to be closed. But it's also really some of these legislative, like where we can come in or you as legislators, to trying to really de-risk some of that area, to attract more financing, to have clear regulations and strong commitments in place that can then actually trigger additional financing and supporting to translate those commitments into action. And that, because it's really oftentimes not necessarily an issue of ambition. Yes, it's just the speed at which we're acting now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just one thing that I want to say. When you read the reports on climate change, methane is more on the footnotes of the report. And I want to call on countries that let's shift the agenda of methane from being footnotes of climate reports to being in the agenda of our national imperative as countries. Thank you.
Thank you so much. 1 minute, please.
Thank you. While I appreciate a lot in the audience and on the panel look at how things work top down, given your position in terms of legislators and members of parliament, as private sector look at it, we look at it bottom up. Yeah. So we think that, and I would think that the compounding effect that goes with climate mitigation and the circular economy, looking at it not as one big thing that needs to be solved, but pieces of the puzzle that needs to be improved every percentage point across the circular economy. So that means for companies like ourselves, really supporting those what you'd call SMEs moving into growth companies that are really contributing to the circularity of it. Yeah, because I think that is the engine that will fuel the whole mitigation exercise. Yeah, so it's not just about big projects; it's those small projects that happen all over the country. That if they are all supported 10% improvement through policy, we can all together then help to shift and to really mitigate what is happening to our climate.
Thank you so much. And lastly, Honorable, please.
Thank you.
1 minute.
As parliamentarians, I want us to live here with renewed sense of determination to combat the climate, misinformation, and disinformation. As lawmakers, we need to lead by example before preaching to others. That is why parliamentary action is very, very crucial here, and the leadership is so important. As I indicated earlier on, in Ghana, under the distinguished leadership of the Speaker, Right Honorable Speaker Baben, Ghana is making a lot of progress, and as parliamentarians, we should take the leadership, confront the climate skeptics, deal with misinformation, disinformation, and confront them with the scientific facts. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Let me take this opportunity to thank all of the panelists who were here. They've spoken really good, and I must say that this session needed almost an hour because every speaker here seems to be an expert and they've got a lot to share to the audience. I'm sure that we'll keep engaging. You engage with the audience and audiences. If you have anything to ask, maybe in separate sessions and whatsoever, you can engage any of the speakers. Just as Senate Kujuan said in the morning that when all the technical issues have been discussed, it goes down to Parliament. And as a member of Parliament, I must say that this calls for an action. On the two speakers, the presenters that they said something, they all called for an action on 4 things: legislation, budget, oversight, representation, communication. We must establish methane monitoring reporting requirements. We must mandate leak detection and repair programs for oil and gas infrastructure, allocating funding for all landfill gas capture and waste-to-energy systems, advocating internationally for affordable concessional climate finance, and this includes bilateral cooperation with technology leaders for co-development. With these few but many remarks, allow me to release the panelists, and also we give them a hand of applause. Thank you so much.
Thank you very, very much. I think the moderator has done a good job in summarizing. Honorable Mikateko wanted to sing. I think he needs to do that before he sits down. Please give him a microphone. Do we need to stand up? Do we need to stand up? No. I want it to be... Okay. There was a vote that you should, but anyway, it is fine. So thank you very much, Honorable Tiaone, for that very informative session. I'm sorry that we'll not take the interventions now, so we'll combine the two sessions and then we take them at the end. Is that okay? So that we save a bit of on time. So allow me, ladies and gentlemen, therefore now to welcome the Honorable Dr. John Mutunga, who's going to moderate the next session. Please clap for him as he comes. He is a member of parliament here in Kenya, but also a co-chairperson of the steering committee. Karibu sana.
Thank you very much, Joa Gayo, for that very warm welcome. Ladies and gentlemen, honorable members, our fourth session, rather, is where we are right now. I would like to call the members of the panel, but just before that, my name is John Mutunga, as he has said, and I have the pleasure for moderating this session on agricultural systems and methane. Agriculture, as you know it, remains central to African economies and livelihoods, supporting food security, employment, and rural communities across the continent. It is at the same time, agricultural systems are increasingly affected by climate change while contributing to methane emission through livestock, rice cultivation, and others. To be able to deal with these issues today, I would like to call upon our four panelists, starting with Dr. Claudia Ant, who is a senior scientist and team leader of the Mazingira Center at the International Livestock Research Institute here in Nairobi. And she leads multidisciplinary team working across low and medium income countries' livelihood systems to create and applying data for climate response and food secure development. Please welcome, Madam. Take a seat first. I will also call upon Dr. Pauline Chivenge. Dr. Pauline Chivenge is a senior scientist in cropping systems, agronomy, and climate change, and country representative for the International Rice Research Institute in Tanzania. She is a soil and biochemistry scientist and has quite some long-standing experience focusing on soil nutrient management and soil health in smallholder farming in Africa and Asia. So she leads a couple of international projects working diverse farming systems in topics that include geochemical nutrient cycling. And she will be one of our panelists this afternoon. On the other hand, we have two politicians who are also going to join us. And allow me to introduce the Honorable Bashir Abdallah. Bashir Abdallah is a member of parliament from Kenya. I don't seem to see his brief here, but Bashir has been in the National Assembly for Kenya and has also been exposed in the area of climate change and area of, let me just say a few things. Bashir is a retired major in the Kenyan forces. He has done a lot of operations, including having been in peacekeeping management in the Horn of Africa. He has also served as operations officer in the African Union mission to Sudan. And he is the founder and managing director of Vika Security Services. And he was elected as a member of parliament in 2017 to represent Mandera North. I believe he is in his second term now. So Bashir, we are saying the term. Welcome, Bashir. And then our fourth and maybe final panelist is Honorable Kabisa Gansho. I hope I'm pronouncing your name properly, Madam. The Honorable Member is a dedicated public servant who has served as a Member of Parliament for the African National Congress Party since 2019. With the party, she holds a significant leadership role in the Eastern Cape Province Executive Committee. Currently, she serves as the chairperson of the Portfolio Committee on Forestry, Fisheries and Environment, a role that leverages her extensive experience and promotes sustainable resource management and preservation of the South African natural heritage. Those are our panelists. Before I call the first panelist to make a presentation, whether probably she wants to stand here or to make a presentation from her seat, let me say that this session believes us to answer 3 questions. One of them is to articulate methane emissions from agriculture. We'll see how agriculture is a contributor to pollution. Then the other one is showcase practically how to reduce methane. And the third one is explore how parliamentarians or parliaments support climate action while advancing for food and nutritional security and just transition goals. In this discussion, this discussion is therefore important because it is not only about emission reduction, but it is also about how countries can strengthen food systems, improve productivity, support farmers and build resilience in ways that are practical and appropriate for African contexts. We will begin by hearing perspectives from experts, as I said, and it is my pleasure, therefore, to invite Dr. Claudia Ant, who is a senior scientist, and team leader, to make a presentation. Madam, welcome.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to talk about the livestock sector for you, but first I want to start with just breaking down where methane is coming from. So we know methane globally, 40% is coming from agriculture. Of this, 32% is from livestock, and most of that is from actually the animal, and some part of it is from the manure. The other 35% come from fossil fuels, and waste, we have 20%. But these topics are going to be handled in different sections. And the global methane assessment identified that livestock is actually the highest or the best opportunity to reduce methane for Africa. I also wanted to give you a little bit of a picture on what the global warming potential of methane is, because we've been talking about it. So if we're producing 1 ton of methane and 1 ton of carbon dioxide, when we look at it on a 20-year horizon, methane is 84 times as potent as that carbon dioxide there. And when we look over 100 years, it's 28 times as potent. So why we're focusing on methane now is because methane is a short-lived climate pollutant. It is in the atmosphere for about 12 years. So if we reduce it today, that methane potential is not going to be there after that anymore. And that is one, only short-term climate pollutants can help us to meet not hit the 2 degrees warming. So the no return point where we don't want to be. But at the same time, we need to reduce other greenhouse gas emissions like CO2 and nitrous oxide as well. But that is just to explain why methane is such an urgent topic to be addressed, because we can really reduce warming in the short term with that. So methane has different risks associated with it, as we've talked already about. It contributes near-term warming. It also is a health hazard for people. It leads to climate change, so it affects our agricultural production, and also has impact on our ecosystems and resilience. But I also want us to look at it is also an opportunity. We can actually get rapid climate benefits from it. We have many solutions that can improve productivity and reduce emissions per product. We can increase our air quality and have a healthier population, and we can use it as an energy resource through biogas, and we can use it as a fertilizer by nutrient cycling. So it is really an opportunity, the way we need to look at it. So when we look at livestock in Africa, we all know it's central for food security and nutrition, for livelihoods, for women and youth employment, also for soil fertility, we're using the manure. Also, it is important for climate resilient. It's not like a crop. Your livestock can move if there's no grass, it can go elsewhere. If you build a crop and there's no water, you will not be able to water it. So it gives population climate resilience. And again, an opportunity to nutrient cycling. So now when we look at what the animal protein demand is going to be until 2050, it's going to increase quite a bit. But it's going to increase mostly because of population growth. There is I put underneath the animal protein consumption for Africa and Europe in comparison. And you see by 2050, Africans are still only eating a third of animal protein what Europeans are going to be eating. So livestock is really an important part of nutrition for Africans. We're not overeating livestock products, so there's not a discussion about that we need to have a dietary change, because sometimes I run into discussions with people around that. And like the increase we see in the demand that needs to be met, it's because of growing population and feeding the populations. So it's needed for food security and also for the climate challenge, because we have more food demand and we also have more climate events. We will have more risks of droughts and floods, and that will challenge our food system, how we're producing. And we need to learn how we can really improve our livestock productivity to use less resources and produce more with fewer resources, and also at the same time have a smaller impact of livestock to the climate. This is a graphic to explain you how productivity increases can reduce emissions per product. When you look at the x-axis, y-axis, you see that the emissions per product is there. And if you increase milk yield on the bottom, you see that the emissions per product will go down. And we have often lower producing systems, so that means we have quite an opportunity to really reduce emissions per product. So if we are able to increase productivity, our emissions per product are going to be really going down quite a bit. So that's an opportunity for us as well. Then I also wanted to explain that if you increase productivity, so we have a modeling scenario, my team has posters outside, you can go in more detail and talk with them around that. We can actually did look at production and different interventions, so we can actually increase livestock productivity if we use multiple interventions by up to 3%. That means we can from baseline what we're expecting, and that means we can reduce emissions per product by over 50%. But that also means because we're producing much more now, we're going to have 35% more total emissions. But if we aim for meeting the demand, we're going to have actually less emissions at same productivity with a healthier cow and with applied interventions compared to the business as usual. So that's the blue bar you're seeing there. So if we're aiming, this is called avoided emissions, and that's what we're going to work for, because we want to have a production scenario where we're meeting productivity, and we're doing that with efficient animals so we can reduce emissions compared to animals we may have now, which can be maybe fed a little bit better in other health interventions. So with that, I wanted to talk about the solutions that we already have. And there's, for example, feed innovations. So I've brought my team with me. They're all sitting in the back, but we have a stand outside from the International Livestock Research Institute where you can find all of the people who are here on the slides to talk more about the detail. But the point is we can improve feed quality, and by improving feed quality, we can improve, for example, what we did in the study, milk production for 23% and methane per kilogram of milk by 15%. All of this is outside. You can take flyers of it as well. So there are also animal health interventions. We're working a lot on this. So we did a modeling scenario for Ethiopia, where if we applied different health interventions, we could reduce emissions per product by 56% even. We did a modeling scenario for Kenya, where we looked at calf mortality. If we were able to not have calf mortality anymore, we could feed 4.5 million more Kenyans with beef. And we have mastitis, subclinical, so the farmer doesn't even know it's there. If we are able to prevent that, we could have milk for over 1 million people more. Then there is a general system if we put multiple interventions together. So that was looking at feed interventions, health, breed, and management intervention. The system mitigation for Kenyan beef could be by 52%. Then it's also important, so manure, usually how we have it in Africa, it's usually on the pasture. That's not going to produce a lot of methane. If manure is stored in liquid, it becomes anaerobic. That's when it starts to produce methane. But we can use the manure from our livestock. We can do different manure management strategies like composting, improve the storage, and also biogas systems. So we should be using our manure better. Sometimes it's not always used in the systems, and we really should use it as a good research to produce better crops. So now we have the solutions, but how we're going to go for impact. We need these solutions, and we need to work on solutions that actually work for the farmers. We need to be able to measure what the production gains for these farmers are, what the mitigation for us is, because you need to report it underneath your NDCs, for example, and maybe you want to unlock carbon finance. But for the carbon finance, when we are talking about any of the intervention strategies or solutions, I urge you to make sure that anything you suggest to the farmers, it needs to be profitable for them without carbon finance, because we cannot rely on carbon finance. We need to have solutions that work without carbon finance and maybe leverage carbon finance to get some extra benefit. This is just another slide that puts together the different intervention pathways and the benefits. And then for scaling, what do we need? For scaling, we need to have research and innovation. We need to help create the evidence and the supporting tools that you need to measure what you're doing, how you're producing productivity, how you're reducing emission. And then we need to be able to scale that at landscape, regional, and national level. So I wanted to give an example from our social scientists as well for scaling what works with farmers. They usually work with pioneer farmers. What is a pioneer farmer? A pioneer farmer is what that farmer may do something a little bit different than the neighbor. They're are a little bit more productive, but they're not unreachable for the neighbor to do. So they're not the top farmers, and they like to teach other farmers. So they then understand how they're doing this and learn from them, how the solutions are implemented on their farm. And these farmers usually also are interested in teaching other farmers. So you have events where farmers can teach farmers to really scale the knowledge that is already there, because we have these solutions, we have these farmers on the ground that can help their neighbors and their community to become better food producers. And then I also wanted to just talk, you know that livestock is more included in the NDCs for African countries, so of the 12 countries where it is here. When it's included, the interventions that are included for the NDCs is feed management, manure management, animal health, productivity improvements in MRV systems and silvopastoral systems, just to give you an idea. And for the MRV systems, we need fit for purpose. So we need MRVs that allow us to show to the farmers what their production gain is. If the farmer doesn't see a production gain when they put the solution on the ground, they're not continuing to do it because they need to adopt a different behavior, and that's not that easily done. We also needed to help policy and implementation decisions, so you can actually decide where we're putting money and where we're prioritizing financing to put different interventions on the ground. And last but not least, we need to be able to track that. ILRI, we're here in East Africa. We've done a lot in East Africa, but that doesn't mean we're only here. We're building capacity. We're training scientists from different regions. We're working with governments and trying to help achieving these goals. And so the ultimate goal for us is a more efficient, a resilient and lower emission livestock system. Why? Because we know methane matters for climate change, but it also gives us opportunity and we can reduce it. We need African livestock pathways. We want to improve productivity, and we need practical solutions that work for our farmers. And at the same time, we need to create our own evidence for Africa to support the implementation. And for the scaling, then we need some finance policy and partnership and an MRV system. And with that, I'd like to thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Claudia. I felt like interrupting, but it was so interesting. I was also learning. Let me now call upon Dr. Pauline Chivenge. And Pauline, you'll be listening to my mic ringing. I'll click on it.
Honorable members and respectable guests, good afternoon. So I'm going to talk to you about methane emissions under rice cultivation in Africa. And my name is Pauline Chivenge. I'm the country representative for International Rice Research Institute based in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania. So I thought I should just give you a brief background of who we are. We are an organization which is part of the CGIAR, Consultative Group of International Agriculture Research. We were founded in 1960 with our headquarters in the Philippines. We have presence in Asia and in Africa. Our regional office here in Africa is in Nairobi, and we have offices in 5 other countries, including Tanzania. So we recently developed our strategy for 2025 to 2030, and we have 3 impact goals that are interconnected to drive the impact of our work over the next 10 years. The first impact goal is improved nutrition for the farmers and the consumers of rice. And then the second impact goal is a sustainable planet, which is a goal that is related to what we are here to talk about today, because it talks about ensuring rice-based food systems that are climate resilient and circular, and reducing the overall environmental footprint of our production systems, looking at methane, looking at the synthetic inputs such as fertilizers and agrochemicals. And then we also have the third goal as inclusive livelihoods. So ensuring that we are improving the livelihoods for the smallholder farmers that grow rice. So why is rice important? It's important because it feeds half the global population. It is grown by mostly smallholder farmers, more than 140 million farmers across the world, which represents about 25% of the farmers. And then it's a source of income for these smallholder farmers. Rice utilizes about 10% of the total arable land, and it uses about 15% of the fertilizers used worldwide, and it uses a lot of water. So rice is a water-loving crop, utilizing about 35% of the irrigation. So rice is at the center of food security, and the global demand for rice is increasing, but it's increasing much more in Africa at a faster pace than other regions. So our per capita consumption is increasing. We are eating more rice than we used to the past few decades. That is because of changing preferences, consumer preferences, but also the increasing population. So by 2050, we are going to need about 75 million tons of milled rice, and half of that is coming from Africa. So we need to produce this rice with fewer resources because we have limited land. We are going to also ensure that we reduce the environmental footprint, And we are doing this under a changing climate. So rice is mostly grown under flooded conditions. So compared to other cereals, the other major cereals such as rice and wheat and maize, rice emits significantly more greenhouse gas emissions. If you look at the figure on the right, you can see that rice emits 3 times more methane emissions than other crops. And if you look at the middle, you see that rice contributes about 6% of the non-carbon dioxide greenhouse gas emissions, which is quite significant. So methane emissions are actually increasing in Africa because we have an increase in production of rice in Africa in response to the demand for rice. Following the global food crisis of 2008, Coalition for African Rice Development was formed to promote the production of rice in Africa to reduce our dependence on imports from Asia. And also with support from development partners such as the World Bank, we have expanded our irrigated rice, which means that we are going to emit more methane emissions. We are going to emit more methane. And we can look at the figure on the left. It's showing how rice area expansion has happened in Africa, about 700%, compared to other global regions, which have barely increased their area under cultivation. This means that our rice production has increased only through expansion, but not increase in productivity, which means we are increasing our methane emissions. And then when we look on the right, you see that we have agriculture contributing more to greenhouse gas emissions compared to other sectors, which is different from other world regions. So most of the expansion in rice production has been happening in West Africa. So the figure on the left is showing you the area under rice production. The blue is representing rice in 1960, area under rice in 1960, and then the orange is representing 1961 to 2018. You can see that there has been significant increases in area under production, and similarly, there has been increases in emissions if you look at the figure on the right. So the increase in the land is also causing increase in methane emissions. So we really need to work on reducing the methane emissions. But the problem we have on the continent is that we have a critical data gap, because in Africa we have very few in situ measurements of methane. Most of the data that we have is coming from satellite imagery, from modeling, and from estimates. So this increases our uncertainty in national and regional emission inventories. So it means that we will not be able to have proper MRVs. We have a single emissions factor in Africa for irrigated rice, which is worrying because we have a spatial variability in terms of production and the emissions. So we really need to increase our efforts to measure greenhouse gas emissions in Africa. So although rice is a significant contributor of methane emissions, it is also one of the biggest mitigation potentials in the agricultural sector. So on the left, you can see that emissions in the agricultural sector are highest with livestock, like Claudia said, and then we have cropland, and then rice. But when you look at the right, you will see that rice has about 36% more mitigation potential compared to 3 to 9% for the other sectors. So our interventions can significantly reduce the methane emissions contributions for Africa. And it's possible to reduce these emissions because we have interventions that we have tried, particularly in Asia and also here in Africa, but to a limited extent. We have management options such as water, direct seeding, which is managing the water resources, fertilizer practices, and straw management. And these interventions are not more expensive. They are actually reachable for the farmers. And they just need to be made aware and given the information. And in addition to improving the productivity and profit for the farmers, we have the carbon credit, which can provide further incentives for the farmers. So here I'm giving you some examples of the interventions that we have evaluated. The figure on the top left is showing our traditional continuously flooded rice, which is in black bars, and then the intermittent irrigation, which is in the clear bars. You will see that consistently in different studies, methane emissions are much higher under the traditional continuous flooding. And then when we look at direct seeded rice, if you look at the figure on the left, you will see that direct seeded rice leads to less water use, and you have a lower global warming potential compared to the traditional transplanted rice. We are doing some of this work. If you look at the figure at the bottom, which is in blue, it shows our work in Mwea, where we have shown that you can reduce water use by up to 60% when you combine direct seeded rice with alternate wetting and drying. So you reduce the amount of water, but also you do not compromise the yield, and you also reduce the greenhouse gas emissions. And this work is on a poster outside for those who are interested. This figure is just showing that there are agronomic interventions that can improve yield, but also reduce methane emissions. So we can generate core benefits of improved productivity, but contribute to reducing the methane emissions, as was alluded to earlier in an earlier panel. Some of the interventions include trying to make one of the waste products from rice production, rice straw and husk, and make them into a biocircular economy. And then you can use the straw for different aspects, composting with animal manure to make organic fertilizers. You can do mushroom production. You can produce different other products, such as pots that you can use for flowers. And you can use them for biochar, which when applied to the soil can also reduce the methane emissions. And you can add the value for the farmers. This is value addition, so farmers can get extra income from utilizing the waste. So this is just summarizing the mitigation options that we have across the rice production cycle, from the seeds that you use for planting, because the different varieties influence methane emissions. We are breeding some varieties that have lower methane emissions. So you can reduce methane by up to 65% compared to the traditional rice production. We have water-saving technologies. We have mushroom production. All of these can lead to lowering the greenhouse gas emissions. And we have quite a lot of work that we are doing at IRI, which can contribute to improving our rice production in Africa. So the aim is to move towards zero emission-based rice systems. And we can do this across the whole value chain, the rice production chain, from land preparation, the seeds you choose, the establishment method, the fertilizer management, the water management. You can utilize the straw, and you can also do ratooning, all of which contribute to reducing the methane emissions, but also contribute to improving productivity. Lastly, what support we need from the parliamentarians. I think you guys play a pivotal role in shaping the policies and the frameworks that align with climate action and food security and just transition goals. So we can really generate these core benefits. You can also advocate for scientific research that can contribute to supporting sustainable agricultural practices. And then you can also help in encouraging commitment to prioritizing climate-smart agriculture in the policy agendas and fostering collaboration across the different stakeholders so that we can implement strategies that are effective to address the methane emissions, but also contributing to food security, really generating those core benefits. The challenge we have is data. We need more data for accurate reporting of our national inventories of emissions so that we can inform the NDCs for decision making and targeting. With this, I thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Chivenge. I actually wanted to interrupt, but the presentation was very, very, very enriching. And I thought it was necessary for us to go through it so that we be able to understand at least how agriculture is a polluter, as it were, also a solution. Let me now call upon the Member of Parliament for Kenya, the Honorable Bashir, to give us his brief presentation. And Bashir and my other colleague, we have already run short of time.
Thank you, Honorable. You know, during the introduction, he's talked about so many things about me, but if we go two key important things, that is, I am also the chair of the Pastoralist Parliamentary Group, and that's why I'm here. Equally, I'm also the vice chair of the Defense, Intelligence, and Foreign Relations of the National Assembly. So those are the two key things he has forgotten, but the many things he has said are all right. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, all protocol observed. For me, I think I will not talk much because when experts speak, they normally finish with, we expect the parliamentarians to do A, B, C, D. And the best thing to say is, we have heard you, thank you very much, we are going to do this, what you said. And that's as short as it can be. However, that is just to guarantee that we will do whatever is necessary to ensure that we partake on this profound subject. We all know that climate change affects all populations, especially African countries. But it is more so to vulnerable communities, especially the pastoralist communities and low-income urban population. Every person talk about the livestock. When you hear of livestock, most of you, I'm sure in this hall, you think about the cow. The camel doesn't ring in your bell. But if you look at the cow and the camel produces less methane than the cow. So the best way also to reduce methane is to ensure that you have more camels than the cows. That is scientific. I mean, the research is there. The percentage that the camel produces methane and the percentage that the cow produces, the cow is higher than the camel. And so that's why the pastoralist naturally partakes in reduction of methane. And so they also require now more support. It's not the way of life that you think. They don't live in a cage. They don't live in a piece of land. They are highly mobile. Now that mobility ensures that they spread across the issue of the effect of methane. But nonetheless, how do we ensure that the cow and the camel, all of them, are taken care of when it comes to methane reduction? There's the issue of, we talked about carbon credits at some point. The carbon credits these days is profit making. It's actually profiteering than looking at the livelihoods of the farmer, of the livestock farmer. And so as parliamentarians, we have actually in Kenya, I'm sure you all know that our president is champion #1 on matters climate change. actually at the AU level, and that's now for all Africa. Here in our parliaments, we have had a number of acts. The Climate Change Act 2016, as amended in 2023. We have the NEMA, we have the climate change public participation that we have. But all these things generally talk about climate change. Nothing specific about methane. And so it's upon us as parliamentarians sitting in this hall and those who are out there to ensure that our regulations, our acts now specifically target methane. A honorable member of parliament was saying you will see issues of methane at the footnote. It's true. It's something new. And so we just need now to act and say that we need to have regulations, acts, policies, specific, tailor-made for methane. That way, we can be able to tackle the issue of methane. How is this related to livelihoods and the livestock sector? The pastoralists move from place to place. It's highly mobile. The way we want to address the issue of methane on livestock, especially on the cow, is not the same as on the camel. We know populations have grown, the lands is becoming restrictive, but the camel is still there. The pastoralists are still there. They will still keep on moving with their cows and the camels. How do we address the issue of land, rangelands, and the issue of the pastoralists? The other day, we spoke about the issue of public participation. When you go out there and you want to do public participation on the pastoralists, they can't come to our town hall because that's not where they are. They're not found in town halls. You have to go out there and look for them. So some of these policies are really not tailor-made for them. It's a general thing, and then it excludes a larger percentage of the pastoralist communities. And so what we want is to ensure that policies and regulations should equally be inclusive of the pastoralist community. Remember, for example, in this country, we occupy 80% of the landmass. I think for those who don't know, 80% of Kenya's landmass is occupied by ASAL and semi-arid pastoral communities. So 80%, and yet some of these policies, some of these acts, some of these regulations do not favor them. So let's think about the pastoral communities as we make our rules, our regulations, and so forth. So the other thing is the issue of carbon credit. I talked about it. Right now in Kenya, we don't even have regulations that are in place for the carbon credits. There's a draft that is before Parliament, not yet formalized, and I'm sure once it comes to the committee and we go through, we'll be able to have it. But we don't have it as we speak right now, the carbon credit regulations. So, what is the best way to do? And I'm sure in future or soon, we'll have methane credits. It will come. So whoever owns the cow and the camel, or the camel, for example, will have more credits on matters of methane because they produce less. So the more camels you have, the better for you. Otherwise, as parliamentarians, we have had, and that we ensure that we partake on the issue of policy, on the issue of regulations, and the acts, as well as ensuring that we oversight the executive to ensure that the funds that we appropriate is properly utilized to ensure that it addresses climate change and specifically the methane aspect. So our work is just very clear. Experts have said it. We have heard from you. You have given us the input. We will incorporate it into our legislative programs. Equally, as members of parliament, because we represent constituencies, the honor is also on us to go out there and tell our people what is methane, how useful it is to reduce it, what is the impact in our local forest as we go out to our constituencies. Otherwise, if we just leave it in such a whole, beautiful places, and the people who suffer most are out there and they don't know about it, then we are doing a zero-sum game. So I think it's a challenge to us as parliamentarians when we go back to our constituencies, to our villages, we ensure that we cascade the information we have to the people who matter most. Otherwise, thank you very much. And as parliamentarians, we will ensure what needs to be done. And my fellow member from South Africa, I think he's talking about we must defend our land as Africans. Very great. But please also tell fellow South Africans that they should not be hitting on fellow Africans, and they should welcome them in South Africa. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Bashir, for that very wonderful presentation. I'll now call upon the Honorable Ganshaw from South Africa, who will give us the South African experience.
Thank you, Program Director. Let me stand on the protocol that has already been established. I will touch on the agriculture and waste management sector in South Africa. But before I do that, let me first start by saying that climate action is a priority for our government and parliament, as South Africa is one of the climate vulnerable countries where our constituencies are already experiencing extreme weather events like floods and storms. Just last week, we have experienced major extreme weather challenges. We had floods in 2 provinces, Western Cape and Eastern Cape, and that left our communities in a vulnerable state. As is the case with our greenhouse gases, methane is a priority greenhouse gas for South Africa because it has a strong short-term warming effect and accounts for a meaningful share of national emissions. Sorry. On agriculture and waste management, they are central to methane mitigation because they are the major contributors to our methane emissions and offer reduction opportunities closely linked to food systems, municipal service delivery, public health, and the just transition. And our country's methane response is shaped by international climate commitments such as the Sustainable Development Goals and the Paris Agreement, Section 24 of our Constitution, and climate equality and carbon tax legislation that supports emissions, governance, planning, and reporting. We have identified waste management as a more immediate mitigation opportunity through landfill gas recovery, organic waste diversion, improved wastewater treatment, and a related infrastructure investment. We have interventions such as landfill methane capture, composing, and improvements of wastewater treatment that are delivering relatively visible gains. We know that in South Africa we have 3 spheres of government. We have national, we have province, and we have local. So in our metropolitan municipalities, which is our local sphere, these measures are improving service delivery while also improving equality, reducing local environmental risks, and creating economic opportunities. Honorable members and colleagues and guests, while there is progress in projects that reduce methane in agriculture and waste sector, we still need to work on strengthening our farming practices, data collection and processing, finance, institutional capacity, and coordination across sectors and spheres of government. Through our oversight, as my fellow colleague has mentioned, and accountability work on climate action, we want to drive implementation that yields tangible benefits for our communities, not just reducing greenhouse gases, but jointly and inclusively building climate disaster resilience and promoting new and sustainable livelihoods, reducing poverty, strengthening our food and waste management systems, and ultimately a better life for our people. With those few words, thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed. I think we have overshot by a few minutes. I stand guided, but we've heard quite a lot this afternoon, many issues that I've articulated very well, that agriculture really contributes to methane production or methane release or emission into the atmosphere. And you've gotten different experiences from our scientists based on their research, and that research confirms that the facts are as stated. I do not know whether we can now allow questions, but I would like to hear from my senior, Dr. Ageo. How do we move forward? Yeah, thank you very much. I remember the last session, of course, some people might have had, some of our members and participants could have had some questions or clarifications they may have wanted done. And my panelists are also here. I will also stick around. And in case of anything, you can probably ask and we shall intervene. Thank you very much. Joe, please take over.
Thank you very much. Please, can we appreciate them for such an insightful session. I personally learned quite a lot from that session. Now we are going to move quickly. Remember, I promised that from the last session we were not going to have any questions, and so we want to try and combine. So if you can still remember the last session that we had, I don't know whether some people took notes or wanted to ask certain things, but this is Session 2, which was the Methane Challenge, Speeding Up Climate Action in Africa. We did have that session moderated by the Honorable Tiaone Henry from Malawi. And it had Sarah Jane Ahmed, it had Messina Spiegler, Michael Oyello, the Honorable Dixon Dua, and the Honorable Mikateko Malaule. Who was supposed to sing, if you remember, but we want to combine it with this session, and this time just to ensure that we can spread this around, we will not have any two comments or questions from any one person or from any two people from a delegation. So if you are from the Gambia, if one person speaks, that will be it. So we shall go by delegation. So is there anyone from the Gambia who would like to ask anything? Okay, there we have one. How about from Malawi? Any question, any comment? All right, back there. Malawi. Please, let's have a microphone go to Malawi. South Africa. South Africa, going once. Okay, is there any hand? Please help me see them. No, that hand is from Ghana. I'm talking about South Africa. All right, then let's go to Ghana. Can we have someone else from Ghana who would like to speak, if anyone? Okay, please give a microphone to one person from there. They can agree between the two of them. And then from the Seychelles. From the Seychelles, anyone? Okay, those are three. I would like to get four. Algeria. There we go. So we'll start here with Algeria. Can we start from Algeria? Then we will go to Ghana, and then we proceed like that.
Je commence?
Wait.
Moushaba Abdelrazak, member of Algerian Parliament. I would have liked there to be an Arabic translation, but I will speak in French. Bon, mesdames et messieurs, bonjour. D'abord, je voudrais remercier les panélistes pour leur présentation qui était très bénéfique, surtout dans le secteur agricole. J'ai 3 points à soulever. Le premier point, quand il s'agit des sociétés de projection de l'énergie, je voudrais vous partager aussi que l'Algérie, à travers sa société, son ATRAC, a adopté une feuille de route qui vise à réduire le gaz de torchage à 1% et les fuites à 3%. Et elle a aussi adopté un système de surveillance qui est basé sur des outils modernes comme les caméras infrarouges et les images satellitaires. Le deuxième point, quand il s'agit du secteur agricole, je pense que ce qu'ils ont dit à travers les communications, et on peut le réaliser pour les exploitations développées, mais pour les agriculteurs dans des zones rurales qui sont considérés comme des groupes vulnérables qui ne peuvent pas installer un système de récupération de gaz du méthane. Et c'est vrai que le gaz du méthane il est très puissant par rapport au CO2. Donc, malgré le soutien de l'État à ces agriculteurs, mais ils restent incapables d'installer ce système de récupération. Le troisième point, il s'agit de l'engagement des pays africains. La question c'est jusqu'à quand l'engagement de ces pays dans les mesures d'adaptation pourra-t-il résister face à l'intransigeance de certains pays fortement émetteurs de gaz à effet de serre dans le respect de leur engagement. Et merci.
Merci infiniment. We will now go to South Africa. There was a hand from South Africa, no? Okay, let's go to Malawi.
Good evening. Firstly, I want to commend the organizers of this conference for this discussion on methane. The last I attended one of these functions, it was methane really was indeed a footnote, but we are now raised the profile of methane, and now members of parliament are beginning to talk about it. But perhaps what the gentleman said from Ghana this morning about the attrition of members of parliament in our parliaments after a general election. So you have a cohort that is more passionate, and then it goes out, and then the rest that come in are not as passionate or are not as aware. So to encourage the organizers that parliaments, immediately after general elections, we have to have a deliberate effort so that the members of parliament that are coming in are sensitized and are made aware. Secondly, there was another gentleman that talked about budgets. Budgets, as members of parliament, this being a cross-cutting issue, we have to be able to scrutinize the budget to ensure that all sectors are made aware, but also these mitigation factors are there in all budget lines. And so I thought we could make the approach like gender activists, like gender budgeting, how members of parliament are sensitized on gender budgeting. Now we would have members of parliament sensitized on methane budgeting, ensuring that sectors that are impacted, that whose activities can lead to more emissions, we are able to scrutinize and have a discussion and engage and be intentional on what we're doing. What is important that we have to ensure that what we preach, what we sign up to, is implemented, is domesticated, and that there's sensitization right to the to our communities. And the members of parliament are the best persons to carry this message. And so governments, the executive, once it signs up to these agreements, they have to ensure that even officials at the lower levels of government are aware of what we have signed up. Because there's policies that are there, but people don't understand why these policies are there, to what end, to achieve what. So thank you. Mine is more of a comment, but I think there's more that needs to be done for members of parliament to be able to be there, to carry the message to the communities. Thank you.
Thank you. Ghana, very quickly.
Yes, thank you so much. Let me commend panelists, patients. There is a bigger picture here that methane rice production. When it comes to the rice production, we always see that it's the Minister of Food and Agriculture in most cases. When it comes to mitigation of methane, it cuts across several ministries. I wanted to find out from the panelists the kind of coordination that they will recommend so that all these ministries will work together for us to achieve the objective of getting methane mitigation done in our respective countries. Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll take note of that question. I just want to make sure that we get in all the voices. Tunisia? Tunisia? Okay, there we go. And then after that we'll have Tanzania. Do we have Tanzania? Tanzania? No? Uganda? Rwanda? Ethiopia? Zambia? I think I heard someone say Zambia. Zambia? Oh, the Gambia. Okay. Cameroon? Cameroon? Djibouti? Okay, great. So let's start with the Gambia. Please give it the microphone behind us in some there over there.
Yes, we have it.
Gambia, the Gambia first.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Thank you so much thank you to the panelists, from the previous panelists to the current ones that are seated here. Even though my colleague from that was moderating the previous panel has stated that we don't have any excuse. Finance should be no excuse about what we should do. That is very right, because we don't owe, nobody owes us our development. Having said that, Honorable, the first questions I have was for Shara. I'm not sure if she's around, but I will still ask one more general question that has to do with financing, because finances are really important as far as we want to mitigate and reduce methane emission. So mine is a question. It goes like this. What are the biggest technical and financial barriers preventing African cities from scaling landfill methane capture and waste to energy systems? And which policy models have shown the highest success rate in emerging countries? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I've noted down that question as well. Tunisia.
Ok, merci. Donc, je remercie tous les organisateurs de cet événement. Et principalement, j'ai une question pour les États africains. Le problème financier, et je pense que c'est le premier problème ou obstacle qui empêche les gouvernements à utiliser le méthane pour avoir de l'énergie verte. Donc, quelles sont les fondations ou quelles sont les, comment dirais-je, les fondations
that could help all those governments to use the methane that is already there almost everywhere. When we look at all the number of cities that are growing from one country to the other, we have waste that are growing in every city, in every country. So do we have regions and donors that can really help in that sense? For example, in Tunisia, we have Japanese that have helped in that regards. We have 2 projects in Tunisia. I'm going to tell you about that tomorrow in the first panel, the first session tomorrow morning. But I understand that I would like to know if there are other opportunities, other foundations that we can base ourselves upon in order to explore that resource. Thank you.
Did you have Zambia? Yes? Cameroon. Let's go to Cameroon. I saw a hand. Cameroon. No? Okay.
Okay, thank you for recognizing me. I would like to queue with the others to doff my hat to all the presenters and the organizers of this seminar. That said, in fact, a lot has been said here on financing. The crux of the matter seems to be funding. And I think Dr. Goya was even saying that our finances are inadequate in handling the issue of methane. And if we already begin to admit that our finances are inadequate, I see it as a stumbling block, you know, in pursuit of handling this climatic issue. Now, my question is the issue of handling methane more a financial problem or a political will? Secondly, my Honorable Charity gave us palpable examples of the strides that Kenya has made in this direction. And one of the things she told us is that Kenya has an act, you know, in a ban on plastic waste. We tried this in our country, and there was this dilemma between handling plastic waste and the issue of unemployment. I want her to share her experience, how this dilemma was handled in Ghana that is so successful, because the ban on plastic waste has not been so successful in our country because we are trying to weigh these 2 issues. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Djibouti. I saw a hand somewhere there. Is there any country delegation that would like to make an intervention and I haven't recognized them? Okay, one intervention. Yes, there is one here.
Thank you very much. May I also congratulate the organizers of this seminar for the wonderful job, and the presenters and the participants. My concern is also on the aspect of financing. we have been attending the COP's meetings, from the initial one to the latest one. And each time the delegations from Africa go to these conferences with the aim of getting finances for whatever activities they want to undertake in the country to mitigate the so-called climate effect. But in all these conferences, they have always come back home disappointed, meaning the so-called emitters of the waste and gases and all these things are always giving very little funding, if at all they give. So this means this element of funding will never be materialized. So what options do we have as African countries? Can't we come up with our own home-based solutions towards mitigating the effects of climate change, because it is affecting us as a country, as a continent, and definitely we need to do something towards this end. So what is our solution as Africa towards these challenges? Because financing is always going to be the elephant in the room. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So before we finish, I think that I saw a number of hands from the host country, but I'm only going to give two. So one member from the National Assembly and one from the Senate, and that will be it.
Thank you very much. I want to thank you for recognizing us. One is a very controversial question, which I think will be taken in good faith. We have seen and heard and followed Bill Gates championing this methane agenda, and in it as an aspect of artificial meat and also improving on species of rice. What is the point of convergence between this movement of ours and what Bill Gates is doing towards this agenda of methane? Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I have questions here, which I think now I will pose to the...
Thank you. I forgot to say I'm Senator Wafula Wakoli, Senator for Bungoma and Majority Whip at the Senate.
Thank you very much.
And Chairman of the Committee of Agriculture, Livestock and Blue Economy.
Thank you very much. So I want to throw it here, and I think members of the other panel, if you're still around, please feel free to chip in. So the first question, I think, finance has cut across a number of questions. There was a question from Tunisia that basically talked about the financing problem or obstacle for using methane, for example, for clean energy, and wondering whether there are models or ways in which this can be resolved, or whether there are donors out there that are willing to make this a reality. And then there's a question of whether the methane question is really financial or just a matter of political will. And the other question on finance is what the financing options are. I think that was the last question here, given that all these COPs and the different international processes don't seem to be delivering. So I don't know who wants to take the finance question from up here. Anyone? Any volunteers? Either now or do I have any members of the previous panel? Oh yes, please. Let's take the microphone here, and for the benefit of everybody, please do introduce yourself. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
No, not you, sir. Let's start here. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I can a little bit on the finance. I think, those are all very important questions that have been raised, and I think it's on the framing of, is it the finance or the political will? I think it's the both. To share a few numbers, for example, from the Global Methane Status Report, it has shown that finance specifically on methane has increased quite a lot, by roughly 18% in the last year. So I think in 2023 it was almost $14 billion globally, which of course is a much lower number than the estimated need for all of the methane abatement that will be needed by 2030 to achieve the global methane pledge target, which would be close to 130 billion. So of course there's a big gap. But to put that a little bit into perspective, that is actually the full amount that will be needed for methane is just around 6% of what we've seen in global climate finance flows, for example, from, I think the last numbers from 2023, for example. So it's definitely an overcomable hurdle, and there is a lot of growing financing available, but one thing that we've also often heard, especially from finance institutions and private sector, is that what can be done on the really national level is creating those enabling conditions, so having actionable, having predictable regulatory frameworks in place that can then really attract that. And so of course that does come with some upfront costs to really work on those, and to have, like, for example, MRV that has been mentioned a lot, having those in place. So for that, of course, there is a continued need on some of the concessional donor funding, or whether it's through philanthropies or international organizations that support on that. And so, yes, in terms of what's also been raised by the Tunisian member of parliament colleague over there, that's certainly something that I think is we've seen increasing, for example, in the waste sector. So there is some support on that available, including, for example, the CCAC supports some of these waste pilot projects as well, to really use methane as a revenue-generating resource. So maybe I'll end it here if anyone else wants to contribute on these questions.
Thank you. Honorable Dua, you could go very briefly, and then we can come up here.
Thank you very much. As I indicated, in the face of the overwhelming evidence that we have, that climate actions, and specifically actions against methane, is economically beneficial. So, as Honorable Member from Kenya suggested, whilst we look for funding from donor partners, development partners, it is also important we consider homegrown policies to generate resources to undertake such measures. Most importantly, some of these actions do not require so much funding, as Dr. Chivenge illustrated in the rice farming. These actions are very cost-effective, cheap measures that do not require substantial funding. So as much as funding is very important, lifeblood for methane action, it is also important we don't let external funding become stumbling block to our African initiatives to reduce methane emissions. Because after all, economically, we stand to benefit. If you reduce methane in rice production, you increase productivity. So economically, it makes sense whether there is funding or there is no funding. That is the point I want to reiterate for us all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. There was a question that I think came last. The questioner actually said it was controversial about artificial meat and different types of rice species. It's kind of political, but I wanted to find out what the debates look like. Right now, the whole question of artificial meat versus, I think there are things that are going on around improving breeds and that sort of thing. I wonder whether there's anyone who wants to try.
Can I say something?
Yes, please do.
Before, I'll leave the scientists to deal with the artificial meat and the rice varieties. But let me say this about financing. From the illustrations this afternoon, it has been very clearly proven that if we improve on the quality of the animals that we have, we reduce the amount of methane. If we improve on their health, we reduce on the amount of methane that they emit to the environment. If we also improve on the quality of feed that we give them, we still reduce. So we can do a lot that is not necessarily requiring financing in the national strategic options that are taken to improve on the livestock production And even agricultural production, if you look at on the other side of the rise, it was very clearly illustrated that intermittent watering, I saw that can also reduce the amount of methane by a large percentage. So we need to revisit our strategic options as a country and the application of science as it were, so that we can do the normal things that we are doing in national development and therefore reduce methane, even as we look for financing for the more critical and demanding issues.
Thank you. Dr. Claudia, so you holding the mic.
Thank you. So I wanted to touch on different topics that have been raised. So there's a question that was raised about biogas for smallholders. So we had the African Component Biogas Program, and they actually were able, because for biogas, yes, you need to install the biogas digesters. It's a burden to the farmer. Overall, it's profitable when you look at time saved and so on. And that program actually has generated carbon credits to help farmers install the biogas. So in this situation, it's very helpful. We're really talking about small-scale biogas digesters, nothing too big, and it was small-scale farmers that were able to implement these. In other topics of financing, so there are different applications that can be written, like for the Green Climate Fund. They are long processes. It takes a lot of time. There has a dairy intervention for mitigation adaptation project been approved for East Africa as 4 countries: Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, and Rwanda. And that project is actually worth 358 million, and it's working, as I said, on dairy. And IFAD is the implementing partner there. We are helping backstaffing technically there. Then, but like, there is possibilities there. These projects can be written. There are organizations you can reach out for to think that through and how you could do that. But the interventions we're talking about, biogas, yes, you need an upfront investment, but for some you don't need that much upfront investment, and you also don't want your farmers to be like go in depth to change what they're doing. And they're probably also going to be changing slowly. There's not that a farmer will change like everything. I talked to somebody, Madagascar, from rice, and she's like, our farmers, they did the alternative wetting and drying, but they would start with a small parcel and see if that works for them. It's their livelihood. They cannot make a massive change on their production system. They need to start small. So it's a small scaling as well. They cannot, like, they also need to learn these new solutions. They need to do it slowly. So we cannot, I don't know if like massive financing there is helping them. They just need to, I think capacity building is really what we're looking at, what we need finance for, but not necessarily for the farmers. And I know all the countries, we have big countries, and extension is hard because of distances, but there are other methodologies through applications through the phone and so on. So looking beyond that. Then there was a question around Gates-funded projects. So well, I can speak from our lab. We have one project that is Gates-funded. We're looking at low methane forages. What does that mean? We're actually looking at forage accessions in our gene bank. These are forages that we just stored, basically, the genetics, so we make sure they're not getting lost because they're not growing that often anymore. But we're also looking through forages that are grown on farms right now, where we started out, and we're looking, some of these forages have tannins, they have components that can potentially reduce methane. So we're screening these. We're having a laboratory procedure where we can look first in the lab, and if there's a forage that looks promising, then we're doing an animal experiment and measure the methane. But when we're looking at that, the idea is that we have a forage that does not reduce productivity. Often we're looking at legumes there. We're having often low protein diets in animal production systems, so adding legumes would actually help. So there's no like genetic modification or anything happening there. We have a poster around that. You can look at it in the breakout side. Artificial meat, I don't think Africa is necessarily working on it, maybe get me wrong. I've been to while to seminars where that was discussed. I think it is a technology that's worked on. I don't know how big the market for that is actually. It's not that easy to do because you can grow muscle fibers, but then you don't have fat inside. It's not an easy technology, and I don't think the like at this point, it's even more expensive than if you have normal meat. And the emissions, you also need to look at emissions associated with that, and I don't think they were that small at this point either. So there's the technology that needs to be developed, and then in the end, it's a consumer's choice. So I don't see that pushing into Africa anytime soon, to be honest.
Thank you very much. We are completely out of time. I have got a lot of questions and many people requesting to speak, but allow me to just give these panelists 30 seconds each to finish so that we can go, because dinner is actually approaching rather rapidly. Yeah, so let's go that way. So we'll consider the meat comment at your final take, and then we keep going. Yes, and from ILRI they say that you can visit them out here. They have some solutions they are proposing. So let's go as we go along. Yes, 30 seconds.
All right, thank you. I'm not aware of any artificial rice because all the rice that we have is grown from the soil, and we do have a breeding program where we take different genetic material, and then we work on improving the varieties for productivity, and then also working on those that reduce methane emissions. But we also take into consideration the consumer requirements. For example, in Tanzania, if you bring rice that is not aromatic, not like it. So we do take into consideration the local requirements.
Okay, thank you. Let's keep going.
Thank you, Joe. I think I just wanted to answer also from a political point of view the issue of artificial meat, which is also called cultivated meat, and that it's actually a stem from the animal life and taken to a bioreactor laboratory, and all that will mean that it is only now in Europe or America that have those facilities, and they're able to supply us, and so it's business for them. And so for Africans, I don't think we need that. We have our live animals here. We'll continue eating our normal animals.
Thank you.
They can use their own artificial and meat or whatever. On the issue of the rice husks and something like that are normally going to waste, it can be used as a feedlot or a fodder for animals, especially during drought. So we are killing two birds with one stone, reducing on the waste of the rice and feeding the animals during drought. So that is something that actually governments and institutions can think about it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our message from South Africa is that climate action in agriculture and waste management and other sectors should be integrated into a broader development agenda, and it should be funded and capacitated through fair and equitable systems that consider the common but differentiated responsibilities. Asante.
Thank you very much.
Let me also take this opportunity to thank my panelists for being there for us and giving us the information that we need. And probably thank you, Joe, because we might miss it out at the end of the day. Thank you very much.
Thank you very, very much. Please give them a round of applause as they go down. Wow, what a day it has been, right? How many people believe that this has been a great day? Oh, yes. So even if I didn't give you a chance to speak, it's nothing personal, right? All right, so ladies and gentlemen, as we conclude this first full day of deliberations, allow me to thank all the speakers, moderators, experts, partners, delegates for what has been exceptionally rich and constructive in this conversation. Today's discussions have helped us deepen our understanding of Africa's broader climate realities, the science and policy dimensions of methane, and the practical intersections between methane reduction, agriculture, development, and livelihood, such as even the illuminating debates we just had. Now, several important themes emerged consistently throughout the day, and I'll just mention a few. First, that methane reduction presents one of the most immediate opportunities for climate action. That came very, very strongly. The second one is that parliamentary leadership is indispensable. Legislation, oversight, budgeting, and public engagement will all shape whether climate commitments translate into measurable outcomes or not. The third one is that Africa's climate pathways must remain grounded in the continent's developmental realities. This came out very strongly across the panels, and that climate action cannot be separated from food security, economic development, energy access, social inclusion, and so on. And finally, there's immense value in regional learning and collaboration. That again came out very, very strongly. The exchange of experiences across African Parliament is itself one of the strongest outcomes of this first day. Now, tomorrow our discussions will continue with a focus on waste systems, decentralized energy solutions, methane reduction strategies, and pathways for coordinated parliamentary action moving forward. I know you're looking forward to that, and we encourage you to come early and keep time. So thank you very much for your engagement, discipline, and contributions throughout the day. I look forward to tomorrow. And just a logistical note, dinner is served. It will be ready at 6:30 from how I understand it, in a place called Almasi Banquet Hall in this hotel. So please show up for the dinner at 6:30 for more conversations. Otherwise, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure being up here. I have loved it. Asanteni sana.